A number of years ago, I was in a baseball tournament, slow pitch baseball tournament, and it was cloudy all day. It was during the summer, and I didn't wear a hat. And I thought I would be okay. And yet by the end of the day, I was beet red, and even my arms were beet red. I was transformed by the sun. That was the sun with the U. Hopefully our religion is really one of transformation, of daily transformation. We have to be transformed each and every day so that we can have a good perspective on life. And one of the things we ought to really focus on in our spiritual lives is to search for the Lord. Search for the Lord within your own heart. Take some time to listen to your inner being, to listen to the Lord. Search for the Lord in creation. Search for the Lord in others. Search for the Lord in the sacraments. Search for the Lord in the Word of God. Continuously search. And if we search, we will find the Lord. And I think of Bill W., the co-founder of the Alcoholics Anonymous program. He had an amazing spiritual experience, and he was transformed. And yet in the program, it is encouraged that, even sobriety is a spiritual experience, that there's a transformation that has happened. And so, most times we're going to experience the Lord in the very simple and the ordinary. Isn't that really what Eucharist is all about? It's very simple and ordinary, and yet it's profound. In this gospel reading, we have an amazing experience. Jesus reveals his divinity. He reveals his divine glory. He reveals that he is the resurrected and the glorified Christ. And this to encourage us on our pilgrimage through the wilderness of Lent. And what a gift it is to be reminded of the gift of resurrection, the core of our faith. Now, of course, if we go back in Matthew's gospel, the crowd doesn't understand Jesus. The religious leaders don't understand Jesus. The 12 disciples don't understand Jesus. So Jesus is going to give it a shot with just 3 of the disciples and see if he can help them to understand. And they don't really understand either. And at one point, Jesus is alone. Jesus is alone because for the love of God, nobody understands me. And yet he has this experience with Moses and Elijah. He actually needs this. He needs this, that these 2 guys actually would have understood Jesus. They would have awed and wondered at the Son of God becoming human. And they're having this dialogue. But also there's the voice of God the Father speaking, in the same voice, in the same words as at Jesus' baptism. This is my beloved Son, listen to him. And we are beloved children, we are beloved sons and daughters of God, and we take time to listen to that bit of encouragement each and every day. Now, of course, the disciples are filled with fear. They're overwhelmed by this. And this isn't an awe and wonder of fear. They're just simply afraid. And yet, even in our own lives, fear can really overtake us. We can have a fear of climate change. We can have a fear of the never-ending violence that's happening in the world. We can have a fear of what the future is going to look like with AI. And all these kinds of things can just overwhelm us. And yet, what does Jesus say to the disciples and say to us? Get up, resurrect out of that fear, resurrect and do something to make the world a better place. Maybe we need to respond against that fear in some way. In the first reading from the book of Genesis, we have the call of Abram. And wow, this must have been an amazing voice, because Abram leaves his family, he leaves his homeland to go to an unknown land. He doesn't even know where he's going. And that this voice is trustworthy. This voice is one of, obviously, encouragement. And Abram goes. And his name is going to be great. Now, if we think of the saints, often didn't interact with a lot of people in their earthly lives, and yet they are remembered for generations to come. And this is the same for Abraham, the father of the Jewish people, the father of the Muslim people, and the father of Christianity. And so a figure that has continued simply because he followed the voice of God. And and one of the things that can also overcome our fear is the power of God. Let us place our trust in the power of God, that death is no more. Martin Luther King Jr. at one point was ready to give up on his nonviolent protests, and yet he came to this realization: if God has overcome death, then I have nothing to fear. And so as we come to the table of the Lord, the bread and the wine are transformed in the body and blood of Christ. And, we've celebrated this likely many times, and we can easily overlook this, but it's also so that our hearts will be transformed. Our fears will be let go. Our worries will be let go. Anything that needs to be delivered from will be let go, so that we can begin again. And what a gift it is to receive the body and blood of Christ, the risen and glorified body and blood of Christ, so that we can witness to Christ in our world.